This video is designed to help you understand how to develop an annotated bibliography for the AP Capstone program. What is an annotated bibliography? An annotated bibliography is a compiled list of sources informing a research project. It is designed to prevent extensive rereading and includes an annotation for each source that answers 3 questions. What does the source say? Why do you trust it? And how does it inform your research? An annotated bibliography is not a reference page, as a simplistic reference page only lists the sources that were used and does not add any additional information. It is not a copy of the abstract or introduction for each source. It is not an opinion piece on the sources. And it is not a literature review. What is included in an annotated bibliography? First is the formatted title page. This formatting should also continue throughout the body of your annotated bibliography. The format entirely depends upon the academic discipline in which you are working. Next is an introduction. The introduction is designed to provide context for your research question or problem and to give a justification for the way in which your sources are selected and organized. Then there is an appropriate full formatted source citation for each source you are going to be using. And for each source, immediately following its citation is a detailed annotation. Remember, the annotation is designed to answer 3 questions. What does the source say? Why do you trust it? And how does it inform your research? Let's take a look at the individual parts. The purpose of an introduction is to provide context for the topic and a justification for organization of source material. Before we continue on, let's talk about the 3 most common ways to organize your source material within an annotated bibliography. Here we have the 3 most common justifications of order in an annotated bibliography. Each has their own pros and cons. Let's begin with alphabetical. The alphabetical organization is the most simplistic and the easiest to transfer to the paper bibliography. However, alphabetical organization is not useful in showcasing foundational texts, or does it be helpful in understanding connections between various sources. It's good for the reference page of your paper, but not so much for an annotated bibliography. Next is relevance. This one is most helpful in identifying foundational texts, as those would be the ones that go at the beginning. It also requires that you evaluate sources for importance to the research, which helps them be placed in terms of relevance. It is fluid and can change as you find new sources, as you may find a source that is more relevant to your research than something else. However, it is not easily transferred to the paper bibliography because it is not in alphabetical order. Lastly is thematic organization. Thematic organization is most helpful in finding common themes or common ideas across multiple sources. It requires that you draw connections between those sources. Therefore, close reading and good notation is important. However, it can sometimes have overlap between themes, which can be useful in putting sources in conversation with one another, but it is not easily transferred to the paper bibliography, again, because it is not in alphabetical order. So how do you do an annotation? Good annotations include first a full discipline-appropriate citation. Next, each source should have a concise and focused prose evaluation that includes a summary of the content, including explicit information that you wish to use, such as direct quotes, including the pagination of those quotes or information, an evaluation of credibility and relevance of the source and the source of the source, and a reflection on how the information is useful to you. This means, how do you intend to use it, or how does it influence your research? What does annotation look like? This is a sample of an appropriate APA annotated bibliography entry. You'll see that it has the citation, including appropriate hanging indents. Then there's the annotation, which is written in prose form. Remember that the annotation should answer 3 questions. What does the source say? Why do you trust it? And how does it inform your research? Notice physically how this is set up on the page. The citation style and the annotation style may differ between APA, MLA, and Chicago, but the overall purpose and content of the annotation are all the same. Here is another sample of what the annotation should look like. Let's look at how you include the information in an annotation. As you'll see in blue, we have the appropriate APA citation. Red indicates the summary of the source and the information that is found within it. You may see that it says an annotation should be 100 to 150 words. This is slightly fluid, as it can be slightly longer, particularly if you are using explicit evidence from the source. However, the summary of the annotation should go first, and it should be concise. Next comes the evaluation. Again, you see about 50 words. This is pretty spot on for the evaluation of a source. You should be able to quickly apply the CRAP and/or RAVEN tests to a particular source to determine whether it's relevant or not. If, within your evaluation, you find out it is not relevant, you should not include it in your APA annotated bibliography. Lastly, how does the source inform your research? This should be relatively brief, as you should have a clear idea of how you will use this, either in building your body of knowledge or in being used in the background or introduction of your paper. Let's briefly summarize. How do you include the information in an annotation? This should be 3 separate paragraphs, not all jumbled together in one place. Be concise. Although those word limits aren't hard limits, if your annotation is over 300 words, you've probably done too much and you have way too much fluff. Select explicit, relevant evidence from your sources and include page numbers. That makes it easy for you to cite this information later. And only include sources that are relevant to your question or to your research project. Let's close with addressing several frequently asked questions about annotated bibliographies for the AP Capstone program. Can I use a source not in my annotated bibliography? The short answer is you shouldn't need to, particularly if you've done a good job of searching for and curating sources during your background and preliminary researching. However, there are some instances, such as the team multimedia presentation, where it may be necessary to search out new information to combine multiple perspectives. This is, in general, the only time you should be reaching outside your annotated bibliography for information. If I find a new source, do I have to add it to my annotated bibliography? Yes, your annotated bib is for you to organize your research. It is a go-to guide for writing your papers. Add the source. Do I need a full citation? Yes, for each and every source. Should I summarize the whole source or just what I want to use? You should be reading the entire source in order to understand what you want to use. You cannot take a source out of context. You should address the purpose of the work as a whole, then pull specific evidence from the sections that you wish to use. However, you cannot do bits and pieces. You must talk about the purpose of the entire text. How long should each entry be? Your entry should be no longer than about half a page, double-spaced. You should aim for about 250 words total. Is the annotated bibliography the same as the literature review? No, they are not the same thing. The annotated bibliography allows you to evaluate sources and evidence separate from each other. It is a working document during the curation process of research. The literature review requires that the sources be thought about and written about in conjunction